Over half the world traces its faith back to one man, a nomad who left everything he knew to follow a voice that spoke from beyond the heavens. Jews, Christians, and Muslims all call him their father in faith. To Israel, he is Avraham Avinu, Abraham, our father. To Christians, he is the great example of faith, the man who believed God and was counted righteous. To Muslims, he is Ibrahim al-Khalil, the friend of God, whose obedience still echoes in the rituals of the Hajj. Yet across time and tradition, his story has been told, retold, and reinterpreted, not just as a historical memory, but as a foundation of identity. How did one man who lived 4,000 years ago in the deserts of Canaan become the spiritual ancestor of billions? And why does his legacy still define the world's three great faiths today? This is the 8th and final chapter in our Abraham series, Legacy: Why Abraham Shapes Israel, Christianity, and Islam. To understand Abraham's place in Israel's story, we must return to where it all began, Genesis 12. God spoke to Abraham and said, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great." Genesis 12, 1-2. This was more than a call. It was a covenant. God promised Abraham three things: land, descendants, and blessing. These promises became the backbone of Israel's national identity. In Genesis 15, God confirmed the covenant with a solemn ritual. Animals were divided, and a smoking firepot and flaming torch passed between the pieces, a symbol of God binding himself to his word. "To your offspring I give this land," God declared, "from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates." Genesis 15:18. And in Genesis 17, God gave Abraham the sign of circumcision, a physical mark of an eternal promise. "I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you, to be God to you and to your offspring after you." Genesis 17:7. Through Isaac, the promise continued. Through Jacob, renamed Israel, the promise became a people. Abraham's descendants carried his faith through slavery in Egypt, through Sinai, and through the rise of a nation under David. Even when Israel fell into exile, prophets like Isaiah reminded them, "Look to Abraham your father, for I called him alone and blessed him and increased him." Isaiah 51:2. To the Jewish people, Abraham is the beginning of covenant history, the man through whom God entered into relationship with humanity. His faith, his obedience, and his willingness to trust God, even when all seemed impossible, became the defining pattern of what it meant to walk with the Lord. Abraham wasn't just the founder of a nation, he was the father of faithfulness. Centuries later, a Jewish rabbi named Saul of Tarsus, better known as the Apostle Paul, looked back at Abraham's life and saw something revolutionary. In Romans chapter 4, Paul wrote, "Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness." Paul argued that Abraham was declared righteous before the covenant sign of circumcision. That meant Abraham's righteousness came not from ritual, but from faith. Faith became the bridge between humanity and God. In Galatians 3, Paul continues, "Understand, then, that those who have faith are children of Abraham. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise." Galatians 3:7-29. In the Christian story, Abraham becomes the father of spiritual descendants, men and women who trust in God's promise. Jesus himself invoked Abraham's name in John 8, saying, "Your father Abraham rejoiced at the thought of seeing my day. He saw it and was glad." John 8:56. For Christians, that day was fulfilled in the coming of Christ. the ultimate descendant through whom all nations would be blessed, just as God promised in Genesis 12. Abraham's covenant finds its fullest expression in the gospel. The faith that justified Abraham becomes the faith that justifies all who believe. So when Christians call themselves children of Abraham, it isn't by blood, it's by belief. They see in him the prototype of saving faith. A man who trusted God when there was no visible reason to do so. But Abraham's story doesn't end with the Old or New Testaments. In the 7th century, his legacy was revived once again, this time in the Arabian Peninsula, within the revelation of Islam. The Qur'an refers to him as Ibrahim and speaks of him with deep reverence. Indeed, Abraham was a nation, obedient to Allah, inclining toward truth, and he was not of those who associate others with God. Qur'an 16:120. In Islamic tradition, Abraham's faith was pure monotheism, submission to one true God, Allah. He is honored as the builder of the Kaaba in Mecca, the sacred cube that Muslims face during prayer, along with his son Ismail. And when Abraham and Ishmael raised the foundations of the house, they prayed, "Our Lord, accept this from us. Make us submissive to you, and from our descendants a nation submissive to you." Qur'an 2:127-128. The Qur'an echoes a familiar story. God tested Abraham, and he was willing to offer his son. Though Islamic tradition identifies the son as Ishmael rather than Isaac, the heart of the story remains the same: obedience and trust in God above all else. Abraham, or Ibrahim al-Khalil, is called the friend of God. This title captures a relationship of closeness, devotion, and unwavering submission, the very essence of Islam, which means surrender. Thus, in the Islamic world, Abraham stands as a universal prophet, neither Jew nor Christian, but one who submitted to God in truth. When we step back, the parallels are remarkable. 3 faiths, 1 man. For the Jewish people, Abraham is the father of a covenant nation. For Christians, the father of all who believe. For Muslims, the father of monotheistic submission to God. Each tradition sees in Abraham a reflection of its own calling. Israel finds in him a promise of land and lineage. Christianity finds a promise of faith and grace. Islam finds a promise of surrender and purity. And yet, they share common ground: belief in one God, reverence for revelation, and admiration for a man whose trust in God defied reason. Their differences in lineage are historical and theological, but the core remains the same. Today, Abraham's influence spans continents. His name is invoked in synagogues, churches, and mosques, from Jerusalem to Rome to Mecca. His journey from Ur to Canaan still inspires pilgrimages of the heart, journeys of faith, obedience, and transformation. In a divided world, Abraham's story reminds us of something deeper than doctrine: the call to trust God above all else. He didn't just found religions, he modeled relationship. Perhaps that's why, thousands of years later, he still speaks to us. His tents have long turned to dust, but his faith still lives. And while nations have risen and fallen, the promise that began with 1 man beneath the stars still echoes. In you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Genesis 12:3. From the covenant of Canaan to the cross of Calvary, from the sands of Arabia to the modern world, Abraham's faith built bridges where others built walls. And maybe that's his greatest legacy. Not just that he fathered nations, but that he showed the world how to believe. This concludes our 8-part series on Abraham. If you've been inspired by this journey through faith, covenant, and legacy, make sure to like, subscribe, and share, because Abraham's story isn't ancient, it's eternal.